Welcome! I'm Victoria of Estrellita Royalty Astrology. Here we're going to break down and explore the ancient archetypal language of astrology. We'll use this ancient language to talk out the patterns and rhythms cycling in the skies up above that might be able to offer us some insight into our lives down here on the ground. I've been studying for about 6 years, and this past year I took ancient astrology a little bit more seriously by studying at Nightlight with Adam Allenboss. Shout out to Nightlight Astrology. I've also been inspired by the content of Alexandra Blair of Nine Lives Astrology, Whitney Kranz of Astro Arcana, and Alex Amorosi, whose content I all got to know through Nightlight. They've inspired me through their own astrological thinking and interpretations, and here I am. So here on this channel, we're going to explore new and full moons. I don't know if I'll go in this direction indefinitely or if it will be the ultimate shape of this show, but now it's how we're going to get started. So just a quick intro as to why I'm drawn to talking about the moon specifically. The first is we can see the moon in the sky unlike other planetary bodies. Of course, we can see other planetary bodies, but the moon is consistent, right? Being able to see when it's a waxing crescent, when it's waning, when it's full, and all of the lore associated with the 8 phases of the moon. The moon, for as far back as we can go, always help people track time. The cycle of 29 and a half days roughly corresponds to our month, as well as a menstrual cycle. I've been reading Demetra George's Dark Mysteries of the Moon, and I love how she tracks the descent of lunar spiritualities and religious traditions with the literal rise of solar-based ones, and how that aligns with the rise of patriarchal structuring of societies. With that came an overvaluing of what we can see versus what we can't, a devaluing of intuition, psychic capacity, and a greater fear of literal darkness and death, all of which became associated with the unknown, and also, of course, women. We're going to start off with the new moon in Gemini. The new moon makes her appearance in the sky at 10:53 Eastern Standard Time at 24 degrees on June 14th. You might feel it the most if you have planets at 20 to 29 degrees of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. New moons are all about planting seeds and birthing new ideas, often when we don't have all of the information. Trusting in our own intuition without having all the experience, a bit like the Fool card from the tarot deck. An inner knowing that we need to leap before we look, because that's what's called for at the moment. In some ways, me planting this video at this time is a bit like that. I don't know what the bigger vision is yet. New moons always connect to multiple lunar cycles, and so this one does as well. The most obvious one is the full moon that will happen 2 weeks from now. It's also going to carry us towards the full moon in Gemini happening on November 24th of this year, 2026. So pay attention to what you plant now, what's seeding itself now, even if you don't have all the information, and how that plays out in 2 weeks versus how that will connect to late November. Another thing interesting about this new moon is that it's the first time Uranus, one of the outer planets, is also in Gemini. It made its entrance last year, dipped back into Taurus, and then it's been back recently since April. And I'm wondering how that will shift the quality of this new moon. Uranus takes 84 years to circle and make a revolution, so most of us haven't even experienced what that energy would feel like in our lifetime. So every new moon or full moon is going to have a planet that hosts it. In this case, Mercury is the host of this moon. Mercury rules communication and how we think. And so that's tied up in the moon, but it's also in Cancer right now. Mercury is in the sign of Cancer. And so that's going to flavor things. So what's going on with Mercury at 18 degrees Cancer? Mercury in Cancer is all about communicating care. Cancer is often, you'll hear, associated with mothering. Mothering, of course, being nurturing and soft, but also protective. And that protective quality, as we know, can also be quite fierce. Mercury in Cancer might want to communicate through writing a text. Did you get home on time? Might want to communicate through offering of food, through memory, sending somebody a, did you remember when this happened on this day photo? So with Mercury in Cancer, there's themes of protection, there's themes of care, there's themes of nurturance. And so something to think about is, how do you communicate care to others, to yourself? Is it through words, letters? Is it through food? Is it by simply being consistent? There are so many ways to communicate care, and it's top of my mind for this moon as it's ruled by Mercury in Cancer. It's also a big deal for the summer. Not only is the sun about to go into Cancer, as the sun always does at this time of year, Jupiter is finishing up its year-long run in Cancer and won't come back for the next 12 years. It's going to be there for this new moon. It's about to leave, but it's still there. Jupiter's still there. And Mercury is also getting ready to go retrograde in Cancer. So whatever we're playing out now, yes, connects to those cycles of 2 weeks from now in November, but it's also interesting that Mercury right now at this new moon is in Cancer, going to go retrograde and going to pretty much be impacting us, that retrograde, all summer. So it's a summer of Mercury retrograde in Cancer, of that communicating care theme. How might we have to reflect, pause, and think on how we communicate care? How might memory be a part of this? Yes, this is a new moon for planting something for the future, but there's also something that's cycling back to us. And we need to work through whatever that is in order maybe to plant the seed. Somehow it might be connected. So on this theme of Mercury in Cancer, I couldn't help but notice that Marjane Satrapi, the French Iranian writer, died right after Mercury entered Cancer of a broken heart at only 56, literally, I think 2 or 3 days later after Mercury entered Cancer. And of course, I don't know any of the details about the relationship between her and her partner, but someone literally dying of a broken heart makes me think of what it means to lose a deep connection of tenderness and care, and how devastating that can be to someone's vitality and literal life. Persepolis, one of her famous coming-of-age graphic novels about a young girl growing up in Tehran in the Iranian Revolution in 1979, is emblematic of Mercury and Cancer energy for sure. She communicates her history through a graphic novel, through family story, memory, feeling, lineage, care, and all of that to me, again, feels so Mercury in Cancer. Mercury in Cancer, this ruler, the host of this new moon that we're talking about, is also connecting with Mars and Taurus. And it feels maybe a good time to get things done. Even though Mars isn't in the best spot in Taurus, Taurus is more of a sensual, grounded way of being, and Mars wants to get things done quickly. But maybe with Mercury connecting, can give that kind of slow impetus to plant something and work slowly towards getting it done, having more of a deliberate way forward, if you will. Mercury in Cancer is also whole sign squaring Saturn in Aries at 13 degrees. And it was just exact on June 10th, that square. But it's still present in this new moon chart. Saturn in Aries is in fall, meaning it's not well regarded. And Saturn, about structure and wisdom and maturity. Aries energy, Saturn in Aries, ruled by Mars, represents that childlike wanting to go for it energy, and doesn't want to be encumbered by limitation. So in the Aries part of our chart is something we have to pay attention to. It makes me think about, where do we need to restructure some of how we want to make some of our moves forward? How do they connect to how we communicate care to our community and our world? Where is something not working anymore, or where might we take a new approach? And so this new moon also has me paying attention to Venus, as she is making moves and connecting with other planets in the days following the new moon, like almost immediately. Venus can represent love and the dance of love, where we find sensuality and pleasure. And like the moon, can literally represent women and femmes. She does best too in the night, just like the moon. Venus in Leo, which is where Venus will have just entered into, is, for me, I was thinking about it, and I feel like Venus in Leo is the pleasure of being witnessed, and someone who, or just an energy of luxuriating in performance. That performance being any creative act. Whatever the performance is almost becomes the creativity, if you will. So Venus in Leo in all her look at me glory is going to get a fun idea. So it's going to be sextiling Uranus on the 15th, trine Neptune on the 16th, and opposing Pluto on the 17th. So there's all these conversations happening with all these other planets. So with Uranus on the 15th, it's like going to get a fun idea maybe about connecting or innovating and creating with Uranus. Thinking about something creative-wise that might be unconventional, out-of-the-box thinking. And then the next day, it's going to get this hit from Neptune, a bit maybe fog up the mirror vibes, if you will, more romantic, idealistic with that creativity. And then Pluto is going to enter, but it's not like Pluto's entering stage left. It's more like Pluto is going to tremble beneath the stage. So Pluto opposing Venus is a bit more intense and could be felt more intensely. And maybe will remind us of this wild world we're living in, which maybe we're trying to not think about with Venus and Leo. So there could be some tension to contend with, the day-to-day fashion party versus the collective. It could simply be being interrupted in some way by larger forces that maybe we'd rather not think about right now, but we're being pushed to. The dark side of it makes me think of the state, like the embodiment of the state or governments. Venus in Leo also makes me think about, in that opposition to Pluto, makes me think about ballroom culture for queer people of color and how Venus in Leo, when that was all emerging, needed a space of self-expression to not even reclaim, but claim a full space in spite of the power of oppressive forces of both the literal state and also societal, right? Societal pressures and structures and structural violence. Okay, I'm now going to move into horoscopes. Trying my hand at it, we'll see. Let me know if, well, before I get into that, actually, I just want to say that if you don't know your rising sign, you should listen for your rising sign. And if you don't know your rising sign, you can go to astroseek.com, and there's an opportunity where you can enter your birth information and it should give you your rising sign. Okay, so for Aries rising, I'm thinking about the restructuring of community of care with your siblings or neighbors or literal day-to-day communication. How might this shift with your siblings or maybe your neighbors or simply actually in your day-to-day communication? Is there a way in which your ancestry or roots or just the home you grew up in is weaving into how you're rethinking your connections with siblings or how you communicate right now? In terms of pleasure and creativity, how are you innovating your pleasure of being witnessed with respect to your creativity and the art that you make? How do you do this with children? How does it inspire and delude you? Where do you have to contend with larger community forces when it comes to creating? Do you integrate these themes into your work, or are organizational bodies literally at odds with your creative flow and ideas? Okay, Taurus rising. So I have thinking about here restructuring of community of care in the way that you share resources, distribute resources, and share with your community. Resources and how you care for others may be through literal sharing of information with others, like starting a listserv or a newsletter, or a family text chain to check in on people. And then in terms of creativity and pleasure, how do you enjoy being witnessed by your family? How might this be challenged by your career or your status and how people see you in public? Can these two coexist, family life and how you're seen in public, more effortlessly? Or will family provide you with refuge from having to deal with everything out there? Gemini rising. So here I'm thinking about how you communicate care with your own body and getting ideas for this through using your resources well to make sure this happens. So for example, maybe you need a massage to better take care of your body, and that needs to be a part of your self-care routine. But that might mean that you would then have to restructure your budget to make that happen. Might you enjoy being witnessed through writing pursuits, like taking a writing class or showing off your copy skills? Could someone challenge you through your writing, which impacts how you see the world? How can you deepen your understanding of your own beliefs through your writing or day-to-day communication? Okay, Cancer rising. So for here, I'm thinking about how your zone of care is for your mental health and being mentally balanced. Something that I'm feeling is the idea of being free from mental clutter, having mental peace. How can that come through taking care of the body? Drinking water, not overindulging in dissociative activities that add to mental clutter and also clutter the body. So the body-mind connection being prime for a reset. In terms of creativity, how can creative self-expression enhance your self-worth? How might it be nurtured behind the scenes? Maybe there will be deep ancestral entanglements that challenge the creative self-expression in some way. But how can you work with it and integrate it into whatever creative project you have going on? Leo rising. I'm thinking here about how you literally show care to your community and the people you are in fellowship with, and putting a focus on a theme of mental health. So what does it mean here to check in on the people around you in a behind the scenes kind of way? So stewarding your people without everyone necessarily knowing. How can getting back in touch with creativity improve your relationship with your body and overall vitality? How might your community strengthen and give you ideas for your creativity? You might feel a challenge if you're paired off with a romantic partner. And if you're not, you might feel that in other ways like one-to-one connections. How can you continue to get your creative needs met, though, is the point, while still tending to whatever comes up in terms of challenge? Virgo rising. So here I'm thinking about a restructuring of care in a visible place like your career, and how you can care for people in an organizational capacity. Maybe you're starting a new position or rethinking about yourself in that space and how you connect with and communicate your care to your community. With Venus going through your 12th house, a place of the literal unseen, but then the idea of wanting to be seen, it makes me think about what it might mean to find pleasure and joy in being witnessed in unlikely places. So if not unexpected places, this might be more through therapeutic modalities, like going to art therapy or talk therapy, and how that could boost your sense of being seen, which could then enhance your creativity. How will your day-to-day life impact your commitment to the part of working on yourself that feels good? Don't let the day-to-day responsibilities win out. They can coexist. Libra rising. Here, I'm thinking about restructuring of care through engaging with texts or theories, like reading a book about mutual aid, for example, and then implementing what you learn in your career space. You might find yourself being witnessed by your community. Maybe this means going to an open mic through a group you're a part of, karaoke, sharing yourself in some way with others creatively that feels good and makes you feel seen. How can the books you're reading and new ways of thinking support and light up this boost of self-expression? Where might toxic romances or old obsessive wounding rear their ugly heads and take you away from these good vibes? If it comes up, it probably needs tending, but the good vibes in community came up too because they need tending. Scorpio rising. Thinking about a restructuring of communicating care with those who you are indebted to in a deep way, or who are indebted to you, or you both share the same debt. And here I'm thinking of debt as an inheritance, as an intergenerational trauma, or even intergenerational wisdom. Doesn't always have to be negative. Sometimes deep financial entanglements. So anybody you've merged finances with could be, sometimes that's a spouse, sometimes it's people you inherit money with. Where is there a restructuring around how you communicate to be more practical and tender with people who you're holding those deep entanglements with? Is there creativity playing out in your career or somehow very publicly? How is that feeding you and feeling good? How might your intergenerational inheritances play into supporting creative self-expression? Where does family crises or reemergence of something at home pull you away from this, your creativity? There could be an external need that actually emerges, or perhaps it's a reemerging thought pattern that rears its ugly head so you can remember it doesn't have to squash all of your creative dreams. Sagittarius rising. So here there might be a thinking about restructuring of communication in marriage or one-to-one relationships, and how the merging of finances and worlds is impacting whatever new way of communicating is trying to be born here. How might you take the time to get creative with rethinking your life visions and philosophies by what you are reading, where you are traveling to, and where you are exploring? How might your serious relationships inform and invigorate your new thinking? Where might there be tension that you have to sit with or work through connected to your day-to-day communications or even your siblings? Capricorn rising. Where is the restructuring of communication happening for you in your day-to-day life? And how can one-to-one connecting on a deeper level with those around you shift your day-to-day life? Maybe the one-to-one person supporting your day-to-day life is like somebody you work with or who you consult with, like a personal trainer or a therapist or a mentor of some kind, if not a serious long-term partner or very close friend. How can being creative support healing of deeper ancestral wounds and unlock intergenerational wisdom? How can your daily routines also support you in the unlocking of that creative wisdom and flow? Where might you be challenged by your own self-worth or literal resources like time or money? Aquarius rising. How can restructuring communication happen for you with your creativity? And how might your day-to-day practical life and how you care for your day-to-day needs impact your creative life? How can self-expression show up in your one-to-one relationships? What does it feel like to be witnessed by the other? And when can it be pleasurable? How can creativity enhance your sense of pleasure and joy in your intimate connections? You might get in your own way in some way here. If you do, take the time to work through what comes up and don't abandon the newfound sense of play and pleasure for good. It came up for a reason. Pisces rising. How can a restructuring of communication happen for you in your home? How might creativity and joy play into this new way of connecting and working with your family? How can finding pleasure happen in your day-to-day work life? Day-to-day work for you may be at home, but it also may be at the office or whatever it is for you where that day-to-day work is happening. Is there space for you to be seen in these places and enjoy that? How might your home life offer a boost or insight into how you find pleasure in day-to-day work? Where might behind-the-scenes dynamics or even your own mental health come up as a challenge? Tend to what comes up without abandoning your bliss. Okay, that's all I have for you. Please like and subscribe. You would be the first to do so. I will see you again at the full moon coming up in 2 weeks. And I wish you all a really great new moon in Gemini. And please let me know how it's going in the comments. Thank you. Mucho, mucho, mucho amor.